Cape Verde arrived at the World Cup as the kind of team that many people look at and think, it's just going to be a participant. A small country, made up of islands in the middle of the Atlantic, with a population smaller than that of many Brazilian cities, entering the biggest stage of world football, to face teams accustomed to playing finals, lifting trophies and producing stars for the biggest clubs on the planet. On paper, it seemed like an easy story to understand. On one side, football, giants. On the other, a debutante team without World Cup tradition, without the weight of a historic jersey, and without that automatic respect that certain teams already carry even before the ball starts rolling. But the World Cup has a dangerous habit. It loves to shatter certainties. And Cape Verde didn't just show up to fill out the table. They showed that football isn't just about the size of the country, the number of inhabitants, the quality of the squad, or the number of titles won in the past. Football is about organization, detail, courage, game reading, emotional control, and often the ability to survive the minutes when everyone expects you to collapse. For those watching from home, the game seems simple. The ball rolls, one team attacks, the other defends, the referee blows the whistle, VAR intervenes, the score changes, and that's it. But a World Cup match is much more complex than that. A draw can feel like a victory. A save can be worth an entire generation of memories. A foul near the penalty area can transform an unknown player into a historical figure. Added time can carry more tension than the previous 90 minutes. And a small country, when it holds its own against a powerhouse, is not just competing for points. It is competing for respect. Before appearing before the cameras of the entire world, Cape Verde had to go through the part that many people hardly see, the journey to the World Cup, because the tournament shown on television is only the final chapter. The real battle begins much earlier, in the qualifiers, with tough matches, long trips, difficult pitches, smaller stadiums, local pressure, and opponents who are also fighting for the same spot. For a traditional team, qualifying might seem like an obligation. For a smaller team, each qualifying round is almost a personal battle against history. Cape Verde tried for years. They saw their dreams slip away several times. They restarted campaigns, changed generations, faced richer, more famous, and more experienced teams. Until, in a historic campaign, they ceased to be just a likable team in African football and became a dangerous one. It's dangerous not because it had the most well-known names, but because he knew exactly who he was. This is a crucial point in football. The best teams aren't always those that try to play like the favorites. Often they are the ones that understand their limitations and transform those limitations into strength. Cape Verde didn't need to have more possession than a European powerhouse. They didn't need to exchange passes like Spain. They didn't need to attack like Brazil or press like a team packed with Champions League players. He needed to be compact. He needed to suffer without panicking. He needed to choose the right moments to accelerate. He needed to turn set pieces into weapons. He needed to make every play seem bigger than it was. And that's what started to attract attention. When Cape Verde takes the field against a giant team, the average fan looks at the scoreboard and tries to sum it all up in one sentence. They played well or they played badly. They deserved it or they didn't. They were lucky or they weren't. But on the field, the game is full of hidden layers. The midfielder needs to decide whether to press forward or stay back to protect the edge of the box. The fullback needs to understand whether to track the winger all the way or hold his position. The defender knows that a wrong tackle could result in a penalty. The striker knows that he might only have one clear chance in the entire game. And the goalkeeper, especially the goalkeeper of a smaller national team, experiences a game of their own. He can't just defend. He needs to transmit calm. He needs to buy time without overdoing it. He needs to guide the defensive line. He needs to come out of his goal when necessary and, at the same time, not rush into things. In games like this, the goalkeeper can be the difference between a predictable defeat and a historic night. When a favorite team fails to score against an underdog, the game starts to change in intensity. In the opening minutes, the giant is patient. They exchange passes, look for openings, try to find the weakest side. But as time passes and the goal doesn't come, the pressure becomes overwhelming. The fans start demanding more. The players rush their decisions. The finishing becomes more forced. The vertical pass appears too early, and the underdog grows stronger. Not necessarily with the ball, it's about growing emotionally. Every tackle becomes fuel. Every save gets the team on their feet. Every foul won in the attacking zone is almost a strategic pause. Every minute survived raises a question in the favorite's mind. What if today isn't our day? This is how a smaller team starts to turn a draw into a threat. Most fans see a disallowed goal and complain. They see an offside call and think it's an exaggeration. They see VAR stop the game and lose patience. They see added time and think it's just extra time. But in a World Cup, these situations are small doors that can lead to completely different destinations. Offside, for example, seems like a simple rule until it erases a goal that seemed decisive. The striker sprints forward, receives the pass, shoots past the goalkeeper, celebrates, runs to the corner flag, hugs his teammates. But seconds later, the check comes. 1 foot offside, 1 shoulder forward, a line drawn on the screen. And what was an explosion of joy turns to silence. For a powerhouse, a disallowed goal can be seen as just a missed opportunity. For a small team, it could be the chance of a lifetime. That's why the details matter so much. Because the smaller team usually doesn't create 10 clear chances. They create 1, 2, maybe 3. And if one of them slips away by centimeters, the impact is enormous. The advantage rule also changes how a game is interpreted. Sometimes the referee sees the foul, but lets play continue, because the team that was fouled still has a better opportunity. To an outsider, it seems like a quick decision, but during the game, it can define an entire counterattack. A whistle stopped at the wrong moment can kill a promising play. A whistle held at the right moment can open the way to a goal. And then there's the issue of the ball in the hand. Perhaps one of the most difficult debates in modern football. Was his arm outstretched? Did the player widen his body? Was it intentional? Did the ball come from too close? Was the movement natural? Did the move prevent a clear play? In the stands, everyone is certain. On replay, 10 different opinions emerge. And on the field, the referee has to decide knowing that that image will be replayed in slow motion all over the world. The cards also tell a story that many people don't realize. A defender who receives a yellow card after 20 minutes doesn't play the same way anymore. He stops tackling with the same aggression. He retreats half a step. He avoids contact. He overcalculates. And against a fast attacker, that half step can mean everything. A midfielder on a yellow card changes the pressure in midfield. A fullback with a yellow card ends up defending more than attacking. A striker cautioned for dissent may lose emotional freedom in the game. In World Cup football, a card isn't just a punishment, it's psychological control. The penalty kick, then, is almost a sport within a sport. A shot. 11 meters from the goal seems like a simple play to someone watching from the couch, but for the kicker, it's not just about kicking. It's about carrying the weight of the stadium, the jersey, the country, and the consequences. For the goalkeeper, it's the moment when he can completely change the narrative of a match. And when we talk about Cape Verde, set pieces become even more important, because smaller teams, when facing powerhouses, need to value everything that balances the game. Corner kicks, free kicks from the sidelines, throw-ins from the front, second balls, rebounds. These plays reduce the technical difference because they put everyone in a more direct, more physical, more emotional situation. A foul near the penalty area might seem like just an opportunity, but for a country seeking its first major World Cup moment, it could be much more than that. There are indirect free kicks, where the ball needs to touch another player before going in. The referee raises his arm, signaling that the goal doesn't count if the shot goes directly into the net. And there are direct free kicks, those where the player can look at the wall, calculate the distance, choose the corner, and try to make history with a single strike on the ball. This type of play has a special tension. The entire stadium understands the danger. The goalkeeper sets up the wall. The free kick taker positions the ball. His teammates position themselves for the rebound. The referee blows the whistle. And for a second, everything is suspended. If the ball goes too high, it becomes frustrating. If it hits the wall, it's a waste. But if it goes over, curves, deceives the goalkeeper and goes in, that shot ceases to be just a goal. It becomes a national memory. In the World Cup, a common rule can become the most important chapter in a country's history. A direct foul, a well-applied advantage, a avoided card, a VAR review, a well-utilized stoppage time. All of this is part of the real game, the one that exists behind the scoreboard. And that's why stories like the one from Cape Verde are so powerful, because they remind us that the World Cup doesn't belong only to the favorites. The World Cup has always had giants: Brazil, Germany, Argentina, Italy, France, Spain, Uruguay. Jerseys that carry history even before the first touch of the ball. Teams that take to the field with the weight of decades, legendary stars, world titles, and gigantic fan bases. But the World Cup is also made by the countries that arrive without asking permission. Those who, in theory, should only participate. Those who appear as zebras in the news. Those who experts place fourth in the group before the tournament begins. But football has a generous memory for those who defy the impossible. The world remembers when an African team defeats a European powerhouse. It remembers when a goalkeeper from a small country makes incredible saves. It remembers when a team without much tradition holds a world champion to a draw. It remembers when a team that nobody bet on takes the field with enough courage to make the favorite doubt itself. Cape Verde is part of this type of story, not just because I'm in the World Cup, but because I'm really competing. There is a huge difference between participating and being a nuisance. To participate is to be there, to hear the anthem, to exchange shirts, to live the experience. To annoy is to make the opponent change their plan. It's to force the opposing coach to make changes to the team. It's to irritate players accustomed to dominating. It's to transform a game that seemed simple into a tactical, emotional, and historical problem. When a debutante team holds a powerhouse to a draw, the result goes far beyond the standings. He travels. It reaches the streets, the schools, the bars, the families, the fans scattered around the world. It reaches children who may never have seen their country be the subject of a World Cup. It reaches young players who begin to think maybe it's possible. And that is perhaps one of the strongest words in football. Maybe it will work. Perhaps the favorite won't win. Maybe that shot will go in. Maybe that defense will save them. Perhaps that small country can achieve more than anyone imagined. The World Cup thrives on these maybes. And when a team scores its first goal in the World Cup, it doesn't belong only to the player who scored it. It belongs to everyone who led up to that point. It belongs to the rough fields where many began, to the coaches who persevered, to the fans who followed the unglamorous qualifying rounds, to the players who accepted exhausting journeys, criticism, doubts, and previous defeats. It belongs to an entire country that, at that moment, sees its flag take on a new dimension. That's why some stories don't need to end with a trophy to be timeless. Not every outstanding team wins the championship. Some become memorable because they made the world look where almost no one else was looking. And when a smaller team manages to score against giants, it also changes the way we analyze the game, because it forces the public to stop thinking only about name, jersey, and tradition. It forces them to look at the game plan, the execution, the emotional control, the defensive concentration, the efficiency. But none of this happens by chance. The game begins long before the opening whistle. It starts with physical conditioning, with recovery between matches, with video analysis, with choosing the starting lineup, with the coach's conversation with the squad, with studying the opponent's weaknesses, with the decision to press high or defend deeper, with how the team will react when they are without the ball for long periods. For a small team, what goes on behind the scenes isn't just a detail, it's about survival. Cape Verde couldn't rely solely on enthusiasm. Enthusiasm helps in the first few minutes. Then what sustains the game is organization. It's about knowing how to close down the central corridor. It's about preventing the opponent from receiving the ball freely between the lines. It's about controlling crosses. It's about choosing when to commit a tactical foul. It's about understanding when it's worth accelerating and when it's worth taking a breather. It's about not panicking when the ball stays at the feet of the favorite for too long. In this scenario, the coach is playing a silent game. He needs to decide whether to keep the team compact or push forward, whether to replace a striker with a midfielder to protect the result, whether to add speed to exploit counterattacks, whether to save a substitution for the final minutes, whether to change the structure without scaring his own team. Every choice involves risk. If you back down too much, you'll call for pressure. If you attack too much, you give them space. If you move too early, you might lose your balance. If you take too long, you might miss the game. And then there's the mental aspect. Wearing the jersey of a small country in a World Cup carries a different kind of pressure. It's not just representing a federation, it's representing an identity, a population, a diaspora, families who stopped their routines to watch, people who perhaps never imagined seeing that country sharing the stage with world champions. This pressure can crush you, but it can also boost. When the player understands that he is not alone, each tackle takes on a different weight. Each run becomes a symbol. Each minute endured feels like a message sent home. The pitch also interferes. The weather interferes. The travel interferes. The refereeing interferes. The crowd interferes. Even the game time can interfere. In a World Cup, the detail that seems small off the field can appear on the field in the 80th minute, when the legs get heavy and the mind starts to fail. Technology has also changed the game. VAR doesn't just review plays. It changes behaviors. Defenders avoid pulling tackles inside the penalty area. Goalkeepers need to be careful with their positioning during penalty kicks. Attackers know that any fall will be analyzed. Referees carry the responsibility of deciding, but also of waiting when necessary. And all this happens while millions of people want a simple answer. Was it a foul or not? Was it a penalty or not? Was he offside or not? But football is rarely simple. And perhaps that is the great lesson behind a story like that of Cape Verde. Football is not just about 22 players running after a ball. Yes, it's a rule, but it's also reading, it's a strategy, it's a memory, it's emotional. That's a mistake. That's genius. It's pressure. It's a tiny detail that changes the course of an entire match. For a superpower, a World Cup might be an obligation. For a small country, it can be an emotional revolution. A draw against a giant becomes a childhood memory. A historic goal becomes a family story for decades. A decisive save becomes a recurring image whenever someone talks about that tournament. Cape Verde entered this World Cup carrying the burden of not being a favorite, but also the freedom of those who didn't need to obey the script written by others. And perhaps that's what makes these stories so powerful, because the football played by giants impresses with its strength, technique, and tradition. But the children's football is exciting because it reveals something rarer: possibility. The possibility of resisting when everyone expected downfall. The opportunity to compete when everyone expected an easy ride. The possibility of transforming an ordinary game into a historical event. When a traditional team wins, many people say it was normal. When a smaller team faces giants and remains standing, the whole world tries to understand. Who are these players? How did they get here? How did they contain that attack? How did they score that goal? How did this country become the focus of the conversation? And suddenly, a team that almost nobody knew gains a face, gains history, gains respect. Cape Verde showed that size, population, and tradition don't count on their own. It showed that the World Cup can still make room for improbable stories. It showed that even in modern football, full of data, money, technology, and favoritism, there's still room for the unexpected. And that is perhaps the game's deepest beauty. The cup belongs to the champions, of course, but it also belongs to the goalkeepers who keep a clean sheet against million-dollar attacks, to the free kick takers who turn a free kick into eternity, to the defenders who intercept a ball as if they were saving an entire country, to the fans who cry over a draw as if it were a title, to the places that, for 90 minutes, make the world search for their name on the map. In the end, that's what football is all about. A sport where the favorite can have it all: the team, the tradition, the jersey, the history, and the statistics. But when the ball starts rolling, he still needs to prove himself. And the little one, even without almost any of that, also has 90 minutes to write his version of the story. Cape Verde has already proven that it wasn't there by chance. Now each subsequent game carries a simple yet powerful question: how far can this dream go? If you enjoy football stories that go beyond the score, keep following the channel, because here every match has a hidden layer. And Some of them completely change the way we understand this sport.